everyone. Welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to be talking about brain-computer interfaces. I'm Shanti.
I'm Ellen.
I'm Sharvi.
And I'm Serena. So basically, a BCI, a brain-computer interface, is a kind of advanced technology that enables direct communication between the human brain and external devices. By capturing and interpreting neural signals, BCIs allow users to control computers, prosthetics, and other systems without physical movement. These systems will collect the brain activity either through electrodes or non-invasive sensors placed on the scalp, and the recorded signals are then processed and analyzed using computer algorithms to identify meaningful patterns. Once these are decoded, the signals are translated into commands that operate digital or mechanical devices, and many BCIs also provide feedback to help users improve control over time. And as a result, BCIs represent a growing field that combines neuroscience, engineering, and AI to help this kind of human-machine interaction.
Adding on to Serena, the concept started with Hans Berger, who discovered the brain's electrical activity and the development of electroencephalography, which is a test that measures electrical activity in the brain. He was also able to identify oscillatory activity like an alpha wave using EEG traces, and EEG stands for, again, electroencephalography. His first recording device was a silver wire that was inserted under the scalps of his patients, which were later replaced by silver foils. Through all of these tests and adjustments, they eventually led to success. But then later, Jacques Vidal published a paper toward direct brain-computer communications is the title, and it included the first tests of BCI development that were carried out by monkeys in 1969 to 1970, which is one of the first introductions to BCI. Also, as Serena was saying, BCI works as it takes brain signals and analyzes them, translating them into commands which are then relayed to an output device to carry out a desired action. There are also multiple pros and benefits to BCI, such as it improves human-machine interactions, it allows more intuitive and direct communication between the brains and machines, it also helps restore sensory functions or control artificial limbs, and there are also downsides, such that invasive BCIs can damage some nerve cells and blood vessels, which increase risks of infections. Adding on to this, there are also many different types of BCIs, such as invasive BCI, which are the most accurate and are implanted directly into the cortex, which allows monitoring to every neuron. And then there's also partially invasive BCI, which it still involves brain surgery, but less invasive than invasive BCI, and non-invasive, which is something like electroencephalography. Shanti, do you want to add on to this?
Yeah, so basically, there are two main methods that are used, and the first one is, as Ellen was saying, it's called electroencephalography, which is commonly referred to as EEG for short. And how it works is it's a non-invasive technique in which signals are placed on, or sensors are placed on the scalp, and they can retrieve signals from the brain, but as you might imagine, those signals are pretty weak because they're distorted by the scalp. But once the sensors are placed on the scalp, they can record electrical activity at the surface level of the brain. And more specifically, since the signal of a single neutron is way, way too small to measure, it takes areas that have a lot of neutrons and a bigger signal, and it captures that, which can be read on a computer, and different signals can be categorized, such as fast signals are called gamma signals and slow signals are called delta signals. So an example of this is if it was implemented on a person who was sleeping, the waves would be super slow and they would be called delta waves because there wouldn't be a lot of activity happening in the brain. And then the other method is called electrocorticography, or ECOG for short, and how this works is it's pretty similar, except it's invasive because they basically put the sensors into your head, and so they can rest directly on the brain surface, not just the scalp, which is a surgery because it has to go into your head, which so because of this, they only use it for like specific medical situations like epilepsy. And it works in like a similar way, like it picks up signals and then and it actually has better, like it can pick up signals better because obviously there's less to distort the signals because it's not like going through the scalp. But some cons are that it risks infection, bleeding, or tissue damage because they have to like put it into the brain. And sometimes they leave it on for which is called chronic EKG. They leave it on for days at a time, which can also risk more infection. So it's only used in specific situations.
Yeah, also, I'm just going to add on about like the science of it a little more. So basically, a bit of background about neurons is that neurons communicate using electrical signals, which are created by moving charged ions across their membranes. And then basically when many neurons fire together, they produce these electrical waves that can be measured outside of the brain. So like Shanti was mentioning, the non-invasive systems use EEG sensors on the scalp, which are safe but a little blurry. And then implanted electrodes sit closer to the neurons so they give clearer and more precise signals. And then some systems, instead of measuring blood flow changes, they measure blood flow changes because active brain areas use more oxygen. And then basically the way the computer understands the brain is that raw brain signals look like noise. So the computer filters them to find meaningful patterns. And then the machine learning links specific patterns to actions like moving a cursor or selecting a letter. And the brain also adapts and neurons reorganize, so controlling the device becomes much easier. And so this kind of creates like a feedback loop where the human and the algorithm learn together. And then also the way the brain signals are measured is that most BCIs detect electrical activity, which is generated by neurons when ion channels open and the change in membrane voltage. So the most common non-invasive method, like Shanti was mentioning, is EEG, and that's because it's safe, it's cheap, but like she mentioned, the signals are weak because of the skull and the tissue. But there are also some newer approaches that use near-infrared light to track blood flow changes that correspond to neural activity. And scientists can make the brain control a lot of different things, like spell different words on a screen using only brain activity. Or patients with paralysis have used BCIs to move robotic arms and prosthetic hands. And then they can control wheelchairs, computers, communication systems, and even like all of this for people who cannot speak. There's also a lot of pros and cons. Do you want to add on that, Serena?
Yeah, sure. So some pros for BCI includes like it restores function for disabled people. It improves neurorehabilitation because they can assist in rehabilitation by engaging neural circuits after strokes or injuries, and it accelerates brain research by decoding and analyzing neural signals. And like by doing that, like BCIs can help scientists better understand how the brain works. It augments human abilities as BCIs have the potential to enhance sensory or cognitive functions such as memory or attention beyond like what we could have done naturally. And there's also like there's obviously concerns about them being like invasive, so then there's like non-invasive options that like work for everybody. And then some cons include like obviously the invasiveness and the health risks, because people are a little concerned about how it'll affect their health. And then there's also concerns about the fact that it costs a lot and it's limited to people who can afford it, so it's not really like fair to like use it as a general like medical practice. And then there's like signal and accuracy challenges. There's privacy and security concerns because BCIs raise worries about like misuse or unauthorized access to neural data. And then there's also some ethical and equity issues because like is it fair to do like what they're doing with like the autonomy and like the cognitive enhancement and like also the unequal access. So that wraps up today's episode. I'm Serena.
I'm Sharvi.
I'm Shanti.
And I'm Ellen. Just a disclaimer, this podcast is made, created, and researched 100% by high schoolers, so please don't take everything we say as 100% factual. Thank you for listening.